Hello everyone, this is Coffeechug Newsletter for the week of Halloween. This is actually Halloween Day here. What I wanted to do, the experiment that I wanted to try out with the newsletter, I'm always striving to challenge myself and find different things that work, and I've probably found at least 1,000 things this year that have not worked based on feedback and failure. But when you find something that works, I really think you have something powerful. So today, my goal is to create a podcast to go along with the newsletter to kind of give you some further in depth to the reasons why I chose the articles that I have. This particular newsletter doesn't have as much as what you may be used to. I bombarded people with a lot of links last week, and it actually was the highest active newsletter to date that I've had, with a 45% click rate, meaning that almost half of you became engaged in the material, which is really, really exciting to me, something that I'm striving for and will continue to kind of push. And I hope this week's just as good with this podcast. I started off in the title, in the very top, when you get that in an email, one of the things that I'm striving for in season 3 on my podcast channel is a new experiment in which I want to focus on teachers. And you can see the link I provided in the newsletter. You can watch the video and hear my reason for this, but I think that there is a dire need for teacher voice. And so we've already had 1 nomination. I need at least 12. And then here's the thing. Teachers want their voices to be heard, but they don't always want to live up or have their name attached to it. And I think it's time that we break those walls down and start to show that it's okay to celebrate and embrace who we are. So think of someone that you think is making a quality impact on education, on students, yourself, other colleagues in the realm of education. Submit their name, and let's go ahead and start to celebrate and share the amazing thing that educators are doing. In the newsletter, I'm talking about the new format, and so that's kind of a big thing. And so one thing that's going to be really important is that you give me some feedback on it. Was the podcast helpful? Is there other things that you would like for me to discuss to go along with the newsletter? Those types of things. Is it too long? Too short? This is a constant experiment, because that's what life's about, is being in a state of experimentation. And you're never going to be an expert. And I know so much in education, we talk about being a master of a standard or a master of this domain. And I agree with many people in my building that that's a facade. 'Cause I don't know that we'll ever really become masters in any particular area. And life's an experiment. That's what we do. So your feedback is going to be crucial into this experiment. The one thing that I wanted to talk to you about, and I shared, I only have 1 article in technology this week. I actually have a massive list that I'm going to launch next week, but I haven't had time to actually truly feel good enough about experimenting and going through it to share. But this one was a 3D build of a Lego action figure. And I'm currently printing it right now, and it's taking my printer some time. I'm printing it off this morning. And so I'll give you some pictures and maybe some feedback later on. But this just goes, again, to show the power of the 3D printer. 3D printing is becoming more and more mainstream. More and more uses are being done. I mean, we're printing off things for students at our high school for the CAD in their engineering class. Now with this, you can printing off exoskeleton, basically, of a Lego build, and then you can create your own action figures, which is going to be awesome. I cannot wait for it to finish building so that I can start to play like a kid, because play and tinkering is vital. If you follow the blog, then you are well aware of that. Moving into education, I shared an article about Americans needing to learn how to discover. It's a long article, and I hope that you take time to read it, because it is very, very thoughtful. The line that stood out to me the most when you read it is this, that Americans need to learn how to discover. And I think we're getting away from that, which is why I believe so much in play and tinkering and experimentation and making kids do something with their learning. There's such a force and such a pressure to do tests and data points and all these measurements that we never really do anything with. And the reason we don't do anything with, I know people say there isn't enough time, it's because they're worthless. So I'm just going to come out, and I just said it, which is why I shared this article. Because we have to learn how to discover. We don't know the future, but we've never known the future. People say that like it's some thought-provoking idea. I mean, when my parents were growing up, they didn't know what the future was going to hold, and their parents were the same thing. But we have to be developing these mindsets where we're constantly discover. We're constantly experimenting and playing around with things, being able to have those skills to solve challenges and problems in our daily life, whether it's what are we going to do when my son freaks out that there's no more Pop-Tarts and the world's going to come to an end? Or trying to redesign a culture in a building, or whatever it might be, or natural disasters. And so this is a really phenomenal article because I think the push in education is really getting away from this, and it really, really bothers me. And they talk about this new learning lab and MIT and all these things. So really, really well worth your time to read it. It's long, and as of writing this, there are 741 comments, and that's an interesting story in itself is to read all those comments. The other article I shared comes from an educator who I completely value, Lisa. I love her stuff. I've never met her in person, connected with her off and on Twitter. But what she shares about the digital footprint is really interesting in this article, all these ideas, which is interesting because I was listening to a podcast with Gary Vee, and he stated that to worry about your digital footprint is stupid because schools and universities aren't really worrying about that. And the schools that are worrying about those things that you share, then you should be well aware of what you're getting yourself into. And so I'll put a link to that podcast. I'm actually going to make a note of that right now because it's not currently in the newsletter, but it's going to be by the time you watch this. And then you read all the stuff that Lisa shares, and there are some key pieces. And I think it's good conversation for schools and educators to have, because I think what really bothers me about digital footprints and technology and the social media is how many teachers are completely out of the loop. They have no concept or clue about it. Not that they have to be immersed in it 24/7, but this is the world of our kids, and why are we not adapting and learning? And then if not, then don't complain that you don't know. And don't complain that you're not aware of these things because you haven't taken the time to do that. I know that's a strong statement, but I really, really believe in that. The last is the list of education blogs. I came across this. Somebody was sharing it on Twitter. I'm an educator that I highly value. And there are some awesome blogs. I picked up a few that I haven't currently been following, but I now am going to do that. And I'll be sharing out another blog list here soon in the Iowa Educator Voxer group. Devin is developing a list of blogs for his blogging experiment. And so once that kind of gets up and running and I make sure it's okay, I'm going to share that out because that's an amazing thing. There's so many awesome things happening in education right now. It's so important that we continue to share. The biggest thing that I learned this week in that category was one article, and I had three more. I had it, and I decided to delete them because I think this is the article that takes the cake, and none of them are going to stand up to it. But the dating differences between parents and non-parents, I haven't laughed that hard. I haven't agreed more in my life. I had my wife read it, and we were like, yep, that's it to a T. So funny. And being that we just went to a Pearl Jam concert with my parents last weekend and spending the money on the babysitter and things like that, we just lived that whole entire moment, which is just absolutely hilarious. So definitely something to read. If you've had a long week like we've had, then that article will be one to give you some good food for thought. The last thing that I have in the newsletter are just the blog posts that I've read this week. And so you can read those links. Increasing teacher voice. We talked about at the beginning. You need to nominate a teacher, nominate yourself. We got to get that teacher voice up and rolling. So check out that video. Check out those links. See what it's about. I'm moving into action, not just talking about it, but going to make it happen. I have a book review. Doesn't make it to the book table because I don't think it's one of the mandatory reads in my life. But however, being a civils judge, I am reading, I got 50 young adult nonfiction books is my category, and it's phenomenal. I have not read young adult in a long time, and to have nonfiction is really interesting. So I'm getting caught up. There's many of them I haven't read. This was one that I read about how I discovered poetry by Marilyn Nelson. Amazing read in terms of growing up in the civil rights era, all told through poetry. Really, really powerful. And I actually went and checked out her other stuff because it's the empty spaces in poetry that are so powerful. My most popular blog post of the week is "And I Won't Back Down," a great lyric from Tom Petty. If you're a rock and roll fan, a lot of music this week. And talking about Tom Petty references in the documentary Sound City by Foo Fighters, that music isn't perfect and it shouldn't be. It's about connecting people. And I couldn't help but think when riding on my bike that That's what education's about. And I think we've missed a point. We're never going to be perfect. Quit beating yourselves up if you're not perfect, because that's an illusion. And go out and just own it. If you have purpose and you have passion with what you're doing, you're on the right track. I don't care what anybody tells you. So my most popular article, not only this week, but also this month, and I'm getting a lot of great feedback from it. So it's connecting with people. And of course, I've got the link so you can listen to Tom Petty, Won't Back Down, which is a great song. If you haven't listened to it in a while, you need to listen to it. Tom Petty is the man. Last, I'm sharing out by Iowa Educators Sharing Learning event. We're hosting a thing. I mentioned this when I presented at ITech in my 5 sessions, that a month from the conference, I wanted at least 5, no more than 8, because the Google Hangout, to come in and share something that they've used since the conference. If you didn't go to ITech and you have something that you want to share, please go to that link, fill it out. Let's get you on the docket, because once again, it's not only celebrating teachers like I have in the other challenge, but it's then also sharing what we're doing. It could be the smallest, simplest activity. I don't care. It doesn't have to be tech-based. It just has to be about helping share what we're doing in our classroom to help educators around the world. Last but not least, Drop a Turkey November Fitness Challenge. I have neglected my fitness. I have pants I haven't been able to wear in 2 years because I've let my health go. And I'm getting myself back on track this week. I've been running and biking. I overslept this morning, so I'm going to have to make sure I ride my bike after trick-or-treating. That's going to be a mental challenge. But the goal in November, it starts Monday, is to drop a turkey. Basically trying to lose some weight, get ourselves ready. It's a 24-day thing. I'm using Advocare, and there's links there if you want it. People are using Yoli. People are just going to eat healthy, whatever system works for you. But we're going to try to get ourselves back in shape. And then the day before Thanksgiving, it ends. It's a 24-day challenge, so that on Thanksgiving Day, we can gorge like pigs and remember what it's like to eat and eat and eat. And then that terrible feeling afterwards going, okay, it's time to get back on track. So I hope that you'll join us. It's open to anyone. I do have a private Facebook group if you want to be part of that, where we're going to share and inspire and motivate one another to stay the course and get it done. There's the newsletter. However, I realized I forgot one. I lied. It's not the newsletter. The very beginning, productivity, the most important one. I even took notes on. I have my notes of what I wanted to celebrate and share. I got Foo Fighters tickets. I'm going to Wrigley Field in August of next year to listen to Foo Fighters and Cheap Trick and Urge Overkill. It's going to be awesome. But in there was a 60-minute piece where they interviewed David Grohl of Foo Fighters and his documentary series that he's doing, where he traveled he traveled the United States for music. And he says 3 things in there that stood out to me, not for music, but for education. So you need to watch all 12 minutes because it's really phenomenal. But he says in there, who is to say who is good or not? Talking about all the music channels and where the judges judge who you are. It doesn't matter what people think of you. And I know that's hard to get over. You know, I share things just in this podcast that people aren't going to agree with. I don't care. But I hope that you give me your insights. I might be able to learn from you, and together we grow and are strong. But don't let other people's judgments affect who you are. Believe in yourself, and if you're not believing in what you're doing, then that's a sign that you need to change, not because somebody else told you. He also says appreciate your voice and be you, and I love that. We're getting ready to launch, well, we already launched it, a stew camp in Bettendorf, in Webster City, and potentially another location, another state. You know, and that's what our slogan is be the voice, be heard. And I think there's another element to that, and be you. Celebrate who you are and be proud of that. You know, and the last piece he has in there is about interconnectedness. When he went to all these locations for music, even though the music sounds different, where it's blues or jazz or rock or hip-hop, it doesn't matter. In the end, when you get back to the origin of music and why it was created, it's all the same. And as teachers, we all bring our own flavor. I'm Coffeechug. It's who I am. You are who you are. We have our differences, but at the core, we got into this job and this profession for a reason. We can't forget that. We're on the same page. So school districts need to come together. We need to eliminate this rivalry, this my school's better than your school. We need to work together. We're in it together, and let's truly make education strong. But it requires sharing, and it requires networking, and it requires doing something. So that's the newsletter. There it is in 15 minutes. Let me know your thoughts. Let me know what you think about the newsletter and this podcast, the video, audio, whatever it might be. And I'm out, and enjoy your weekend.